Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining in for this Torah portion, which is Shemini, aka the eighth. So I want to start off by saying, like I normally do, thank you, thanks to God for giving me the ability to speak and give a word on His Torah. There's always something He wants us to learn and grow from, but this year in particular was my first Passover or Pesach, and I really enjoyed not only recounting the salvation of God, bringing His people out of Egypt, or just connecting the dots and praising Yeshua's name for extending salvation to liberate me from my sin. But I also enjoyed feasting with family and friends, knowing what had to be sacrificed for us to get here. But speaking of sacrifices and offerings, let's take a look at the verses for this Torah portion, Shemini. And where it's basically for me, that's Leviticus chapter 9, verses 17 through 23. It's coming from the Net translation. Next, he presented the grain offering, filled his hand with some of it, and offered it up in smoke on the altar in addition to the morning burnt offering. Then he slaughtered the ox and the ram, the peace offering sacrifices, which were for the people. And Aaron's sons handed the blood to him, and he splashed it against the altar's sides. As for the fat parts from the ox and from the ram, the fatty tail, the fat covering the entrails, the kidneys, and the protruding lobe of the liver, they set those on the breasts, and he offered the fat parts up in smoke on the altar. Finally, Aaron waved the breast and the right thigh as a wave offering before the Lord, just as Moses had commanded. Then Aaron lifted up his hands toward the people and blessed them, and descended from making the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the peace offering. Moses and Aaron then entered the meeting tent. When they came out, they blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all of the people. Now, this in particular, I wanted to try and paint a picture, and to get you guys to notice something. In particular, the insight that I had was, notice that they had to do a sin offering, a burnt offering, and a peace offering. Something had to be killed for sin. Something had to be fully consumed in fire on the altar. The burnt offering with nothing left for the priests. Nothing was held back in devotion to God. And the peace offering was to restore right relationship with God. And this sort of brings me to my first point, which is the endless cycle, or the circle of sin. And I have that verse put down as Hebrews 10, chapter 10, verses 10 through 14. And that's coming for me out of the CJB translation. It is in connection with this will that we have been separated for God and made holy once and for all through the offering of Yeshua, the Messiah's body. Now, every Kohen, or priest, stands every day doing his service, offering over and over the same sacrifices which can never take away sins. But this one, after he had offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, sat down at the right hand of God, from then on to wait until his enemies be made his footstool for his feet. For by a single offering he is brought to the goal for all those who are being set apart for God and made holy. Now, I have a question for you guys. How often do you sin? Is it once a day, 3 times, 20 maybe? Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. That is just a trick question. The truth of the matter on that is it doesn't really matter. You sinned against God. We know that this isn't some small thing. So how do you make things right with God? What exactly do you do? Well, according to the Mosaic covenant, a sacrifice must be made and blood must be shed. You had your morning and evening sacrifices, your Shabbat sacrifices, your sacrifices for high holy days, and then you had your offerings for if you sinned on an occasion throughout the day. That seems like a whole lot going on just to be covered from sin, and that's because it is. You're right; it is a lot to just be covered up, to be covered from your sin. But I think that we, as congregation, as people of God, we can dig a whole lot deeper than this, just the surface level acknowledgement. The sacrificing of bulls and lambs can get to be expensive. When you think about how back then having those animals in terms of livestock helped you get work done and also helped you to barter, sacrificing these back to back is definitely a big chunk of change. It's even more when you consider how much nowadays with the livestock industry, the prize winning bulls and like sheep and all that usually go on costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, imagine that every time you wrong God, you had to make a sacrifice beyond just what He initially required. It's almost like every time that, if you're a parent, that if you were to curse as a parent in front of your kids, your kids force you to put a quarter into a jar. Now, what does this tell us? The cost of sinning before God is high. It's tremendous. So, to put it into further perspective, when I looked into how much blood would be needed in a year of sacrifices, it amounted to yes, livers too. It amounted to literal rivers of blood. So if the book of Hebrews is telling us that these sacrifices could not cover our sin and the amount itself is literal thousands of gallons of it, what does that tell us about the depths of Yeshua's blood that actually can cover us? Yeshua put it plainly to us in John chapter 8, verse 34. I tell you the truth, everyone who sins is a slave of sin. So without the sacrifice of Yeshua, you're stuck in the mindset of slaving away, working tirelessly, sacrificing things, and doing actions that cannot actually save you. That is, unless they were actually a sign pointing to something greater, which I had marked down as Matthew chapter 12, verse 6, which Yeshua said that something, you had the temple, but now something greater than the temple is here. And I love that. Now, going on to the next part here, that brings me into Titus. So in Titus chapter 3, verse 5, it tells us that He delivered us. It was not on the ground of any righteous deeds we had done, but on the ground of His own mercy. He did it by means of the mikvah of rebirth and the renewal brought about by the Ruach HaKodesh. Now that's coming out of the CJB, but I specifically chose this translation for that verse because of the word mikvah. Mikvah is not necessarily just like a washing, like you're washing your hands or like you're taking a shower. It's more so within the context of Judaism, of preparing yourself for service of God, cleansing yourself spiritually, and in a lot of ways it is you go in unclean with your old self and your old way of thinking, but then you come out with a new mind and heart to do the work of God, and you can approach Him. That also, brings me into Hebrews 9:12, where we think about Yeshua, where it says that He entered the holiest place once and for all, and He entered not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by the means of His own blood, thus setting people free forever. So again, going back to what I mentioned before, where you had the blood of the goats and the livestock and everything, those were things that could not actually save you because of how constant and endless the cycle was. But Yeshua, His blood, Him being the perfect lamb, Him being perfect in everything, He is able to shed His blood for us so that it's a one and done thing. We don't have to keep slaving away to keep trying to make up for things. So this does give me into the next question here. He set the example for us on a lot of that stuff. But the question is, we hear a lot of the time, the work is finished. What does that actually mean when He said it is finished or it's accomplished? That's a good question. When did the work finally end? This was something I had to dig really deep to try to understand, wading through a lot of cliche Christian quotes to actually get to the root of it all. But what did Yeshua mean when He said it is finished, or as some translations say, it's accomplished? What was accomplished? Enter cliche Christian quote, He freed us from the bondage of the law, but you should even question and ask what that means. I prayed and I asked God about the best way to explain it, and I was told to use my own life as an illustration. But when I had left, so to kind of give you guys an idea, when I left the faith for some reason, despite being told I was free from the shackles of religion, I still felt very dirty and guilty. I still felt unclean. Even when I was told I was free, I still felt the need to prove myself to others, to myself or to others, that I was good or some kind of upstanding citizen, right? So I volunteered and I helped out different people that needed assistance, but I still felt like trash. I then moved on from atheism to Buddhism, and then from there to New Age spirituality. And even from that, I went on to dabbling with the idea of Islam, considering that as an option. But the truth of the matter is that no matter what path I walk down, I still carry like the same sort of bargain bin theology from each one of those. And it was with the thought that I could do enough works to make it to nirvana or Jannah or some other kind of beyond. The systems of Hasatan will try super hard to convince you that there is peace in simply doing righteous acts, having faith in doing a sort of checklist. You'll be saved, but what's the catch? No one knows how many tasks you have to do or for how long you're supposed to do them. And at the end of your life, you just have to trust that you did enough. But the truth is that this is not peace. That isn't the shalom that surpasses the world's understanding. It's not a peace or wholeness that the world can provide. All it is an anxiety beyond compare, knowing that my or your eternal salvation rests on us doing enough. That isn't peace. But true peace is Yeshua himself. And Paul mentions this. This is coming out of the net translation. It's Ephesians chapter 2, verse 14. And he says, "For he is our peace, that one who made both groups into one and destroyed the middle wall of partition," the hostility between us and God. He knocked it down so that you no longer have to sit up here and stress yourself about being able to get to God. God did that himself. He came to us and said, "It's finished. It's done. Don't stop working yourself to death over something you can't do. I did it, and therefore he gets all the credit for it." So this leads us to the ultimate question. If Yeshua is the one that knocked down the wall of partition, and Yeshua is the one that brought us closer to God, what do we do now? So what do we do now, knowing that we can't do anything to earn our own salvation? I'll tell you. We read God's word and we see that he set up a system in place to tell us what our problem is. We learn that he's telling us that there is a high cost for sin, so much so that the soul that sins must die, that blood must be shed, and so much so that we can't supply it. The human body only has so much blood. And we learn that the system is not supposed to be an eternal thing. It's not supposed to go on forever. It's meant to point us to the one that can end the cycle of sin and end the longing we have from trying to make up for our mistakes. It points to Yeshua the Messiah, Jesus the Christ. Okay, this is fine and all, and it's fine and dandy, but if our actions can't save us, and what do we actually have left to offer God now that we're cleansed? We hear about within we hear from the Old Testament. I believe it is Isaiah that says, the righteous deeds or the acts that we do are like filthy rags. So if we have unclean hands and we're trying to offer something to God, what exactly can we do? What can we offer him that is actually worthwhile? Well, I'll tell you what that is. What we can actually offer God is ourselves. And that takes us to Romans 12:1. You are to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice to God. So you are on the altar. And that also, another thing confirming and backing that up from Old Testament is you do not, it's Psalms 51:16, verses 16 through 17. It says, "You do not delight in sacrifice, or I would bring it. You do not take pleasure in burnt offerings. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. So that means that God wants us to come as we are, to come as broken. He doesn't want what we can offer him. He doesn't want our money. He doesn't want, burnt offerings. He doesn't want anything else along those lines. He just wants us. Now, if that is not a loving God, I don't know what is. But anyway, that's all I have for you guys today regarding this Torah portion. And I pray that God blesses you and keeps you, and that Yeshua is the light of your life.